about, is it better to go through some level of adversity than not? Then yes, I would say adversity is what builds a person, all right? However, we have to also acknowledge that the varying degrees of adversity can also damage a person.
Facts, yes.
Especially when it happens very young.
Yeah.
So, you know, for example, a young girl, young boy getting isn't great. We don't want that to person, right? But, you know, but maybe growing in poverty, that's potentially maybe a good type of adversity. You're pouring, trauma is pouring all of this water. It's going to get a point where the water's going to overflow. If it's not empty. The whole point of therapy and the whole point of dealing with your issues is better. The whole point of dealing with your issues is that when you go through something, you pour it out. When you go through something, pour it out. But if it's constantly overflowing, it's going to pour out, right? Now, where you're talking about people that have come from maybe a middle-class background, the socioeconomic situation is different. They haven't gone through a lot of trauma, stable household, mother and father, etc., etc. They haven't got anything. This is very weak because nothing has had to hit them and then build it back up.
When I went to Niger, I saw a car crash, and this woman like was definitely dying like with her family, and I was saying to my family members like, "Right, she's dying," and they're like, "The ambulance ain't gonna come and the police aren't gonna come. What do you want us to do?" I was thinking, this place is the wild, wild west. They're literally just watching her die out. I was just like,
if you can survive living in Nigeria, that's the reason why Nigerians are the most successful black nation, not only within Africa, but outside, because of what they have to experience in that country that gets insulted. You speaking to Tommy Robinson is like, oh my God, how dare you speak to us? Like, why? He's another human being. He has a different thought, opinion. We want to have conversations. Isn't it better to hear him out and then create arguments against him rather than making assumptions based on the little clips that you see on ITV, right?
That's accountability.
Yeah, but that's critical thinking. And what society does, it dumbs us down, doesn't want us to critically think.
New questions every day, how's a brother supposed to sleep?
Listen, I give youngers books.
Trying to educate myself as I'm running through these streets.
There's no such thing as black and black crime.
You can hit us in the DMs if you want the smoke. Pew, pew, pew.
Not sure where the conversation's gonna go.
But did you do your research? Yeah, I wanna know.
That's the life of a domino. It's the
domino
effect.
What do you mean, how long are we
You
talking
say
about?
growing up, so how long ago are we talking about?
Well, I'm a bit of a middle millennial. You're younger millennial. You just about make the millennial, really.
no, he's 2 years older than me. So.
Oh, okay, fair enough.
Well, how old are you?
Fair enough.
Don't mind me asking.
31.
Okay, yeah. So in and around the same time.
Yeah, you're not different eras.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, so growing up, nobody... We both Bo, obviously Bo, because we got to respect where grime came from.
Yeah.
But once you pass that, so
Bro, we talking about...
But Newham is there.
No. All Jammer... Where do you think Jammer used to record most of his music? It was in Stowe. What are you talking about? A lot of grime came from Stowe. Let's not do that.
What, the north linkage to east, is that what you're saying? Because north is, Stowe's like northeast, so then that's when all the Northmen come to east.
It's east, isn't it?
when you say Stowe, what's short for Stowe? So say Stowe.
Wolfenstowe.
Maybe by accident, because
A lot of
we allowed Tower Hamlets because of grime. We allowed Tower Hamlets because of grime.
To this day, isn't really like Tower Hamlets is just Tower Hamlets.
Well, Bo was in Tower Hamlets.
Yeah, but people knew about Bo. They didn't know about Tower Hamlets.
Yeah, so we just supposed to we allow it just because of that. But nobody knew about Walthamstow.
How can you say no one knew about Wolfenstowe when a lot of grime came from Stowe?
Who?
A lot of the main grime guys.
But who? No, the main ones came from Bo.
So even the Jam was one of the biggest.
And then Tottenham and then Hackney. Nobody came from Walthamstow.
What, rappers?
Okay, maybe somebody came from Plaistow. They came from Plaistow. We give them that. Plaistow.
Plaistow.
Potato.
He's supposed to be the East girl. She's saying Plaistow.
I was thinking, what's she talking about?
Plaistow.
That's what my auntie says that. So Plaistow.
No, because that's what they say on the tube. Have you ever heard it on the tube?
Nah.
If they say Plaistow on the tube.
Yes.
Really?
Yeah.
Correct English out here. Exactly.
Really? I never heard Plaistow in my life.
No, because the first time when I was on
yeah, because you're that part of East London, Hackney. We say Plaistow.
Serious?
Yes.
Nah, yeah, that's the first time I heard that, boy.
It's mad.
It won't be the last that you hear it.
Say that.
I can't partake. I'm LU2 and RM16, so where?
Yeah, there's no conversation there. Yeah, outside the M25, no one's talking about.
Some Robinson's people in them there.
Oh, come on, G.
But you got the airport, so we give you respect, though.
Yeah, it's a lit airport, man.
It's not a lit airport.
It's not lit, but it's cheap. When you want to go,
That's
when you want to save money, yeah.
You're going to go Heathrow and pay double the price for what
You
reason?
walk into the entrance, you can see the plane over there, bro. That's Luton right there.
Yeah,
We're in though, yeah? We're recording, yeah?
Well, yeah, thanks for shitting on my ends. But anyways, so we're inside with a lovely guest again. If you'd like to introduce yourself for the camera, give yourself a nice little spiel.
Hi, my name is Ngozi Cadmus. I'm a mental health and leadership expert, qualified social worker, psychotherapist, and business strategist. Thank you for having me.
Does Cadmus, is that your married name? I just realised that's not very Igbo sounding.
No, my husband's not Igbo. He's actually a Wari boy, Shakiri. Yes. But no, it's not even a Shakiri name either. But no.
Okay, colonization or the Cadmus?
Yeah, he's got a confused heritage. So the easiest thing just to say that, it's not a Shakiri name at all. But yeah, I didn't have an Igbo surname either.
Really?
Ngozi Chukwuka was my only Igbo name, was my middle name.
Oh, so okay, fine. What you don't have to say what your last name was. Was it an English name?
Yeah, it was English name.
Oh, serious?
I swear.
Yeah.
God.
Do you know why?
My mum liked the hotel and named me after that.
Interesting.
Yeah, immigration issues. No, immigration, because my mum came here and we stayed here illegally for a number of years, so...
No, I was going to hot up my family on certain stuff, but let's leave that one.
Bro, we all got here for the same. My name is double barrel to this day.
Really?
One of it is real, the other one's fake. It's some next guy that lives in America that got deported time.
So people ask me, like, where's your surname from? I'm like, do you want to know the story? There is not an exotic story. My mum came, she liked the Sheraton Hotel, and she was like, Sherato is our name. And then, yeah, but I don't ever remember sharing our surnames. I've always been the only Sherato, more or less.
Have you?
So my name is so unique.
You know your original
Surname?
Yeah.
My mother's maiden name. Yes, I know it, but I couldn't say it because I've never really used it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And there's only if I ask her that, what's our Igbo surname? But Igbo surnames can be different because similar to Yoruba surnames, they're not actually surnames. You can take the name of your granddad, you can take the name of your dad, depending on how your parent when they born you and stuff like that. But I know where I'm from in terms of my heritage, my state, my tribe, my town in Igbo land. So
yeah, it's just like my last name, I'm not going to say government's ain't actually. My last name is supposed to be Mamadou. Then my granddad said, yeah, don't like that last name, and just changed it. Just literally. So it just like, I'm like, oh, where'd it come from? And I'm kind of like,
Mamadou.
oh, yeah, imagine that.
oh, is that your Igbo name?
Mamadou, that's crazy. Crazy.
My husband's Babalola, but he's not even Yoruba. But that's another confusing story.
Yeah,
Babalola.
Bamilola. I've never heard Bami and Lola before though. That's a new one.
No, Babalola.
Oh, Babalola.
Babalola.
Yeah, I've heard that still. Yeah, that's kind of mad. But inside on my left, the one and only vegan dickhead, the plant-based warrior.
Big up the Meatless Crew, you know how it goes.
Oh, you're vegan?
I'm transitioning back into that lifestyle.
Is it?
I'm veggie now, like fully, but to go back to vegan.
Are you back fully?
If you want a vegan, if you want a vegan wife, I can hook you up with a vegan wife.
Oh, serious?
Yeah.
Interesting.
What kind of vegan though? Are we talking like?
She's a proper vegan. Like she doesn't like wear leather, all of that.
No, but does she like?
She can make Nigerian food vegan style.
Oh, I was gonna say.
Serious?
Yeah, because Nigerian food is basically vegan. Just you put the.
I said.
It's just because you put the meat. Yeah.
Except for like suya, and I need that in my life sometimes.
Yeah, suya's.
She can allow that. She can accommodate that.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
Well, as long as she's flexible, you get me.
What about Shaitan? B-Tech Burner Boy. Or Burner Boy from Wish.
You know, people been messaging me that now.
What, Burner Boy from Wish?
Since the last episode, like, they just text me, Burner Boy from Wish. LOL. Name's catching on now. Yeah.
So Eduardo, aka Edicus. Right, that was a bit of a starter there. That was poor from me.
It's all good.
Then we got me, the most masculine host of the pod.
Don't let him gas you. This guy lies his height on social media, bro.
You already know the styles.
It's the BBL hairline.
Yeah. Everyone, man, go Turkey in it. If you're struggling, you don't have to suffer alone.
If you want to get away with doing up your hairline without getting caught, just DM him because he managed to do it without nobody clocking.
Okay.
Yeah, I bought it. No, it's not natural. All my family, their hairlines are fried.
You went to Turkey and did?
Nah, I did it in the UK.
No one even
You did it in the UK.
Yeah. I just disappeared a couple of weeks. These man.
And you got no kilos because I've heard people get some kilo scars. You didn't get no kilo scars. That's good.
I've got blood. You can't really. Now you know by now because where they take it from here, you would know come straight away.
Oh, serious?
Yeah.
The back ear's looking 30 still.
Yeah, we wouldn't even know. I'm gonna start a tagline. It's gonna be called "Hairlines Matter." That's what they do. I'm on
No,
that.
they do, man. They do.
Yeah. But anyways, we're in today for a lovely show. Oh, I forgot something, innit?
Go on.
Let's get ready to domino!
Come on. See, we're back again with another fantastic guest. These lot know the last two episodes of the part 1 and part 2 was lit. Because you know we're coming with that content that's just engaging people. A lot of the feedback we've been getting is that the conversation that we're having is opening a lot of people's minds. And that's what we aim to do, innit? So we're going to continue doing the same thing with today. But obviously, we still got to read the analytics, even though things are getting better.
But before I get into analytics, I do want to say, because obviously last 2 parts were very big episodes for us. And we don't usually read into the comments because most people, it's like 17-year-olds trying to troll us. But one aspect I did get about some people that were upset about it is that they felt that we put out what Tommy had said. And they're like, the fact that we're putting out some of the, let's say the juiciest clips from the podcast, that we're taking a stance. For those that are new to it or who are watching bite-sized clips, us as the Domino Effect, we've always set up this platform to have those uncomfortable conversations and to give those voices who have never been heard or not allowed to be heard a platform to speak, no matter who that is going to be. So for us, we even said in the future we're planning to have a conversation with a neo-Nazi who's we're trying to get him to come onto this platform to speak, and us as black people, obviously that doesn't align with us, but the reality is we set it up so if we're always cancelling and muting people from being able to say their opinion, you won't fully understand. And it drives hate further.
And not only that, not only does it drive hate further, but I personally don't want to live in a place where I'm silenced for having certain opinions or thoughts. Whether or not you agree, that's up to you. But people should have the right to speak, because in the event that those rights are taken away, we're heading towards dangerous times. So again, a lot of the times when we have people on the platform, it's not a case that we support them, but it's important to have conversation, and we need to challenge these dialogues. So if you disagree with what someone's saying, that's where the facts and information become important, because then you can challenge a lot of their viewpoints and hopefully change people's minds in the process and start the domino effect. See what I did?
Yeah, that was a good tagline. But once again, as always, people, like, share and subscribe. You guys keep saying to us in the comments that you want 2 episodes a month. Not a month, or fucking hell, that's worse than now. 2 episodes a week, and that you'd want us to be releasing more bite-sized clips. But that only comes if you're smashing the like, subscribe button. And for you Spotify listeners, you're the worst. Because for the subscribers on YouTube, at least they subscribe. I see the Spotify listeners, we have thousands of plays and we have less than 100 reviews. So that means loads of regular listeners are coming back and you're just not reviewing. So I'm disappointed. So if you're listening now, it costs you nothing. Even if you saved it, just do a little pause. Even if you write no comment, just leave a little 5 stars. And then, we'll keep it moving, man.
Keep it moving. So let's
get
into it, man.
Into it today. Thank you, Ngozi, for coming on today. We wanted to touch... First, we kind of want to transition the conversation. We wanted to talk about the trials and tribulations you had, how you overcome it, and how it brought you to your career now, and the projects you're working on with Frontline. So, leading it off, actually, you started your life around here. So... You talk about at points you dealt with suicidality and depression. So talk a bit about that. Like, what was going on in that time of your life that's led you to? Was it past trauma? Was it a chemical imbalance in your brain, or was it you were just struggling with life, or were you not well equipped to deal with certain adversities that are coming? How did you get to that point?
Yeah, good question. Yes, I was just brought up just round the corner from here. But I guess we touched on it before the podcast, and I would say that I got severely bullied when I was younger. So I think that very much shaped the way I perceived myself and in society. And that's kind of what mental health is, really. It's about how you view yourself, how you feel others view you, and then how you feel that you are within the world. Like, what's your place in the world? And if you're constantly being criticized for who you think you are, and you're just developing, when you're 5, 6, 7, 8 years old, you're just learning and growing about who you are. That's your formative years.
So just before you move, were you bullied about for being black, for being African? What was you bullied about, or was it just in general just being bullied?
Oh no, I was bullied by black people. I wasn't bullied.
Really?
Yeah, I wasn't bullied. No, it weren't racial. Majority of the things that I experienced, if any racial element, was more colorism than anything else, being dark skinned. But
So was the bullying, by the way, was it just like...
it was about how I was, who I was.
Oh, just like...
Yeah,
where
yeah.
they just... You don't fit in terms of...
Yeah. I didn't fit in.
The stereotypical bullying, like Dennis.
Yeah. It wasn't a no for nothing ratio or anything like that. So my primary school was a bit of an interesting one because it was like a smaller primary school. So my class, it was literally like 23 boys and 7 girls.
That was my year in school, you know. I had one there, it was so dead.
Yeah, that's how it was.
Everyone was competing for the same girls. They were having the time of their life. Yeah, I went to a primary school, there was 22 boys.
But you man were trying to move to Yale in primary school.
Yeah, well, I'm getting...
Yeah, but you just did kiss chase.
Kiss chase and that. Everyone, there's 22 men chasing 6 girls, bro.
Oh my God. That is crazy because my first primary school for the first year was the massive schools where you've got like 6 year 1s and 6 year 2s. But my primary school just down the road was like a very small primary school. So I was one of 2 girls that were not in the popular crew, but the popular crew was everybody else really, and then everybody else fleeted. It was so funny because when I really think about it, a lot of my friends when I was younger, they couldn't wait to get into the popular crew, boy. They'll be chilling with us, and then once they let's say come through, they'll be so happy to drop us. But I was bullied for many different things, and I think it was really difficult because my mum, because people ask the question all the time, like, what about your mum? When my mum got involved, she made matters worse without knowing it. She would come to the school, confront the teachers, and then what happened was the teachers would then leave me unprotected.
Because they're harbouring their own feelings because they...
Yeah, my mum would like, I think she like blasted, not only she fought some teachers, boy, she went mad on teachers, which I get in her mind was like, how dare you allow this to happen to my kid? But not knowing that a lot of these teachers, now when you think about it, they were young, they were like in their early 20s. So they just held grudges and they never protected me. And so I learned quickly, you don't say nothing to anybody because what are people going to do? You know, all they do is like, don't do that, Tommy, that's it. And then... What
would you have had your mum do differently in hindsight? Or thinking from an older mind? Because I think it's easy to make that, but I'm thinking, what would I have done as a parent in that same instance? Because you're fueled by emotion. My daughter's getting bullied.
Yeah.
I need to do something about this. And she needs to make you feel like she's doing something about it. So how differently would you approach that? Or how would you approach that if your kids are in the same situation?
A very, really good conversation. The thing is, the level of free will that my mum had, I would have, but I would have to tunnel it in a different way because I understand being bullied and because I understand what it is, what kids do and how kids can get away with things that teachers can't even see. They can hit you around the corner, you can come to class all smiling and teacher doesn't even know that you just got bullied. We've all seen that. So it would be having a conversation with the head and be like, what are you doing? What is the policy? What is going on? Who are the parents? Because something is going on in that home that a child is coming out of their house to repeatedly bully somebody. For what reason? I'm not talking about just like words. I used to got physical bully, like my hands getting pulled behind their back, all of this stuff. For a child to be doing that, they must be going through something.
And it was black kids, white kids, girls, boys, everybody.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it was like everybody, but it was... but I was one of very few that were picked on. So, it wasn't like what you see on TV where a group of kids will come and then crowd around you. Yeah. It could be just a few kids, but they'll physically just torment me.
Yeah, you know the thing about it as well is like, you know, sometimes when you're younger, like when I look at certain aspects of like where I was a bully, but it was a thing of like, what you're describing is you're going on there into someone and mashing them up. Where we were, it was just like, because everyone used to say rob each other. So while you try to rob someone the next day, someone try to rob you the next day. But then obviously, because you're just going around being a shit, trying to rob people, eventually when you meet that one kid who you're robbing every day and he's not doing anything back, you're not realising, rather than him being a partaker in what everyone's partaking in, you're now bullying that one person.
Yes, yeah, exactly. Like you're just finding one person to just bully, etc., etc. So I think that, and then obviously I had some abuse that occurred as well. So I think that, and potentially not aware of my father not being around. I didn't really have a conscious understanding that my father abandoned me at that age. So it was only when I got older that I realised that, but probably that did have an effect. So all of that, I think, really contributed into just being depressed. But because...
Well, from young, would you say you were depressed?
Oh, yeah, from young. But it's... and also I have undiagnosed ADHD, so that made sense as well. Like I just, it was ADHD. But again, it's not seen, it's not understood in black kids. Now it's like a lot of kids are just getting labelled ADHD, but back in the day in the 90s, we weren't getting labelled. We were just told we were bad breed or odd or something was just round off. So even to the point where I was on the special needs table, I have no special needs, but I didn't peak at that age, and partly because I was being bullied. I wasn't going to concentrate in school.
I was on the special needs table as well. When you look at my progression from school, but it was weird because I was such a late developer. It's almost like, I think in the spaces of like year 2, I was at the very bottom. Like, you know those kids that get taken out?
Did you know you were at the bottom? Because I didn't know I was at the bottom. I only clocked it in year 6.
Nah, I knew
when
it.
I saw the person picking... I saw one of my friends picking his nose, and I was looking at it. I just realised my best friend was on the table with the popular kids, and I started to realize the colour codes were actually were demarcation of intelligence. I didn't know that at 10 years
No, but
old.
you know, because you know what it is? I think I was always cool with like the popular guys because we were on the sports thing. And then obviously I was looking around and I was thinking like, nah, these guys ain't the guys like that. I remember from young, I was like, I don't know what's off here, but and then when they used to take certain kids out and like, you know, we had some kids who they were like, some of them I do think had learning like ADHD or whatever, but I think some just the IQ, like even to now, I just don't think it's really levels.
Real.
I just don't think that really. So now I'm getting taken up. They used to take like 4 out of a class of 30, and every time I'm getting taken up, like bruv, like, this is kind of mad. Like, why am I getting taken out every time?
You know what? I hear it. In hindsight, I never peaked at the time, innit? But like,
Can you relate to this, Eddie?
See me now, I was always like, I'm a loud person, innit?
Okay.
In school, everybody wanted to be around me. Plus, the way my school worked,
He was that guy.
I was that guy. Because you see, the way my school worked was that my estate was next to the school. So all the mandem from my estate went to my school. So it was always like my estate ran the school. So from the time I was in year 7, I was known from year 7 to year 11. Because these man were getting me to fight the year 11s. And through that, everybody knows, oh, yeah, that's Eddie. You get me? Like, all of that used to happen. So then it's a thing where, because you're always around the popular groups, you never question anything. And it's like, when you're getting pulled out,
You're like, come. Yeah.
and then you see the people that you're sitting with, and like you said, it's the man that picked the boogers. Yeah. It's the man that have the mad holy crap. The man that stink in the blazers.
No, I had one guy. He used to shit on himself.
There you go.
And I just when I was like, Rod, this
I'm in the wrong place, bro. I'm in the wrong place. Nah. For me, I had. Well, I had dyslexia back then, innit? I never wanted to tell myself that I had it, but I had it. You know? Like my reading age was bare low and all that kind of stuff. But I just thought that was, now in hindsight, I think it was down to the way education kind of played out, because my reading age was bad. It was one of those ones where, you know, when they call you up in English class, you have to read them, they're starring that kind of So that just made me act even worse. But then what got my reading age above where it needed, like they were shocked how much I managed to change in that time span, because at the time, I used to love anime, and I always used to watch it dubbed. And then it got to the stage where I can't watch it dubbed no more, so I need to move on to subbed. And I was like, but I can't keep up and read. So I said, fuck this. I'm just gonna force myself to catch up. And without even knowing it, my reading just improved exponentially. But then I just thought to myself, you just aren't teaching us right, because that should have been something you picked up on. It's not a case where you be pulled out for whatever reason and made me feel like a dickhead. It's a case where you're just not teaching me the way I need to.
And shame is a big thing. Shame, I think, is what affects a lot of us, especially if you're black or you're of colour, because you're not understanding that you've got additional needs in that way.
Yeah, they told my dad. My dad says, no, he's not. He's normal.
Yeah,
no, he's not. He
That's what
doesn't have
I'm saying.
anything.
My parents also play an important part, because Africans or Nigerian parents, they don't understand these things. Like, what is dyslexia to them? It's just like, you're just stupid. And I'm going to make sure you're smart.
So by fire by force, you must learn and you must read.
But it does work. So I do remember that we had this like massive spell. And this is when, I think this is the pivotal point in my life where I realised how important education is. Because I never felt intelligent up until this point. There was a massive spelling bee. So made the entire year do 100 spelling, a test of 100 words, yeah. And I got 3 out of 100. And then somehow my mum found it in my bag. Said, what is this? I was not allowed to leave the yard until I got every one of those spellings right. Yeah, all 100. And I remember I was grounded. I did it. I got to the point where I learned all 100 of the spelling. And then the actual spelling competition came up in the assembly hall. And it got to the semi-finals. And I was still whispering to the next person, this is how you spell the word. And they're like, "Rah, why are you up there?" Then I said, I got it wrong on purpose, man. I ain't a dick. I ain't trying to get on stage to be spelling. But I just thought, intelligence is actually respected. Being a class clown, it's all well and good when people want to be around you, but then it goes further than that. And that feeling of people yo, you know these words, like, yo, that's when I thought, oh, this is actually proper. And then from that point, my relationship with education just changed.
That's amazing.
For me, mine was in opposite, because I talk about how I started slow, but you can just see in my report, like through the years, I think from like year 2 to year 4, I went from like the very bottom to being in the top set. And I was like, in my class, academia has always come to me very quickly. Like, I was always like top 2, if not top 3. So I went to secondary school. It was by chance I got a name for myself in secondary school because this guy, he was like, yeah, but he tried to stick it on me. And then at the time I had loads of domestic stuff happening at home, so I was an angry kid. So I ended up mashing him up. But the level of violence that I got him to is like, I was like in year 7 and I was smashing his head against like the brick wall. So then obviously all the older people respected it, like, right, this guy's crazy. But then when it came to like the end of the year, like end of year 7, I cleaned up all the awards, like pretty much all the awards. I think in my year group, I had the most awards out of anyone, like in terms of academic awards. But then what happened from that, like my street credibility, all the older kids started taking the piss out of me because it's funny, in the community, all the things that are good, you get taught as. So I spent like most of my school career trying to hide my intelligence. But even then, like even now, when I look at certain things where I think I'm probably high up the spectrum, the way my brain works, and now that I've learned more about autism when I used to work with autistic kids, like I lack empathy, like so much so to the fact of when people think I'm trying to be funny, but I just say things how it is and I don't see how other people feel. And the way my brain works, like I remember even as a kid, like I found out who Malcolm X was, and for like 10 hours I sat on Wikipedia and just read the whole thing. Like when this was like when I was like 11. Like when I find something, I just fixate on it and my brain, and that's probably why I'm so good at investment management, because I can just sit at a screen for hours and fixate and it doesn't bother me. But when I'm looking at how other people are built, they'll probably start going mad. But yeah, sorry, digress, you were saying about...
No, it's so interesting. Yeah, so I peaked at a later age, so I could talk about my emancipation. But yeah, I guess when you think about like depression and stuff, it's not something at that age you even know what that is. So you just think it's kind of normal. And my personality with those that were close to me was extroverted, happy-go-lucky, etc., etc. So when I got into year 7 and I wouldn't say I got fully bullied, but still picked on, it was in year 8. I remember this. I will never forget the day that day you can never pick on me again. And I was in art class. I hated art with a passion. And there were these 2 girls and they used to talk about me relentlessly. I went to an all-girls school. And then, so I planned, I had a premeditated attack. I was like, I'm going to attack these girls, yeah? So I remember in class, I just sat there quiet. And then, that's how you know body language is so powerful, because they knew something was off. Because the moment the bell rang, they literally jumped up from the table. And the little one, there was a shorter one, yeah, I really wanted to get, because her mouth was more sharper, but I got the bigger one. And I got her in the headlock. Did the same thing, but I don't know what I did to her. I did what I needed to do to her, yeah. And then I went to got into the head teacher's class, and I was smiling. I was just happy. I was happy. She suspended me, and I was happy. But when I look back at it as a therapist, I realised that the teachers again failed, because the teachers could hear this person picking on me relentlessly for over a year and a half. Yes, I shouldn't have reacted in that way. But what does the one person do when they're constantly being insulted for no reason? They're going to break. They either break and hurt themselves, or they break and react. So when I got suspended, I was happy. And when I think about it, so you asked the question, what could be done? If the art teacher said, you know what, this girl's been relentlessly being bullied, maybe she should still be suspended, because obviously it's not 2 wrongs don't make a right, but you need to understand the context, because you're seeing a girl crying and seeing me laughing. You're thinking I'm the bad one. I'm not the bad one here. She just messed with the wrong person. But it took a whole year and a half. And for me, that was like several years of constant bullying. So from that age, from then, yeah, I never got bullied from then, boy. I would even say that I wouldn't say I became a bully, but what it was, when somebody did something to me or like insulted me, because of how I felt like I was picked on, I would go 10 times harder. Yeah, so if you cuss me, boy, I will cuss you for 2 weeks and I will be disproportionate to what you did to me, but in my head, you're going to get it. How dare you?
How did that moment of like, that emancipation affect your psychology? Because obviously up until that point, you felt depressed. Was there?
I was still depressed.
You're still depressed?
But I was a harder shell now. So I grew up, we were talking about this off the podcast, but I grew up in, obviously, North London, but I went to school in Camden. So I don't know if you know a school called, you wouldn't know it, EGA. There's a school in Angel called EGA, Elizabeth Gareth Anderson. Michelle Obama actually went to that school.
Yeah.
She went to that school. When Obama was president, she came and visited that school.
Okay.
Of all schools, EGA, you should have come to Maria Fidelis. But anyways, she went, I wasn't even in school them days, but she went to EGA. Okay, so in year 8, all around about the same time, I started fighting. So we just started fighting bare schools, Islington Green, Maria Fidelis, Mount Carmel, all of the schools in North and Northwest London. Mate, we went to East London to fight. We went to West London to fight. We were just fighting. But even then, I was still depressed. Okay. But now, you just couldn't mess with me. You know, I was just fighting. You just couldn't mess with me. And growing up, from year 8, my personality shone. So it became more evident. I was always that way, but because I was bullied and I was a bit more, because I was scared of people. Like if in year 7, year 6, year 5, you told me to go over there, I would go over there. Now if you told me to go over there, I'll just look at you like, excuse me, you can't talk to me like that. But what happened there is that I did not learn how to use my words. I learned to use my fists. Mm-hmm. So if you insulted me, I wouldn't cuss, I'd just fight you. I didn't know how to articulate myself. So what that basically meant is that, again, having probably ADHD, my behaviour deteriorated. So like I said, I peaked later. I knew I was always smart. That's why when I was on this table, I knew I was wrong. I just didn't take education seriously. So I was very intelligent. Very, very, very intelligent. And I always finished my work faster than everybody, but I found school very boring. Okay. It was understimulating. That's why fighting was fun, because it stimulated something in my brain. Cut long story short, I was bound to fail my GCSEs. My mum came into school and she was crying because she'd never come into school for anything positive. And I remember looking at her with tears. She had tears in her eyes. I was like, just beat me, don't cry. She didn't talk to me for 2 days. I think that was the change of I can't come to school and fail. Even though I don't care for school, I always had a sense that I was going to do more than what I could do. And I wasn't going to come out of school and go to a PRU, because I could have gone to a PRU if I continued to get excluded.
Yeah, that's what they said to me though. When I left mine, they said, because I can even say his name, me and my boy Solomon at the time, we're a recipe for disaster.
We'll do two together.
Yeah, if he does something, I have to do something madder, and then he'll be like, "Yeah, okay." We have to
eggs ever on, okay.
Yeah, I remember one time when we started getting really nuts, this teacher was chasing us, so he put our blazers over our head, and when he was coming through the door, we were letting off the fire extinguisher on him, and he kept opening the door, and we kept letting it off, and he kept coming in, and I was like, "No, you give it to me," and then we were just letting it off. So but I ended up leaving because my mum just said this area is a bit too much, so we moved out to Hampshire. But then when I was leaving in the exit meeting, they said, we were planning to send one of you to PRU, but they were just playing duck goose on which one, because they said, you both can't be here. It was
yeah,
nuts.
and PRU weren't the one. So there was a thing in me, because there was cruise in my ends, and I could have again gone down that trajectory, but I started to, these people are stupid. I literally assessed and said, wait a minute, the trajectory that I'm on is not going to get me anywhere fast, because the people on the estate, sorry, I don't respect you, because you're always on the estate. They don't go home. What are you doing? And then the PRU just looked boring. And I just realised that, no, this is not the way. So I fixed up, got my A's and B's, and I got 1 C from all U's and E's and F's. Did A-levels, all of that stuff. But again, I was still depressed. I was the life of the party, always happy-go-lucky, but depressed inside.
We save balls. Support for today's episode is brought by Manscaped, who is the best in the below-waist grooming. Their products are precision engineered for the family jewels. Manscaped Performance Package, the ultimate men's hygiene bundle. Join over 7 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped with this exclusive offer for you. 20% off and free worldwide shipping with the code Domino Effect. Don't fucking just go and buy it. Put Domino Effect, because we
put the Domino code in the thing. Listen, yeah. Let me be real. Yeah. I shave my balls.
7 million men worldwide. If my maths is correct.
Was that 7 billion?
7 million.
7 million. 7 million and one. Because I shave my balls. Yes.
That's 14 million balls that have been saved by this product. The Lawnmower Trimmer 4.0 is the future of grooming, and dare I say, the greatest ball trimmer ever. This one's not used. We've got a few boxes before you think we're just putting pubes all over the studio and that. Their 4th generation trimmer features a cutting-edge ceramic blade to reduce grooming accidents thanks to their advanced skin-safe technology. Similar to a problem that Ed's has.
Yeah, me. Right, don't try to just pin it on, bro. Idiot guy.
The Lawnmower 4.0 is waterproof and also has a 4000K LED spotter light you need for a precise shave.
So when you're trimming in the dark, it has a little light that flashes. Yeah? So let's say you're in a rush, you got a date, Valentine's Day's coming, yeah? Quickly just in the dark. You get me? So the room's still set, ambiance is still ready. It's got a little LED light for that as well.
You know my biggest pet peeve? You probably don't have it, but with my Asian genetics, sometimes if I get a little, you know what I'm saying, I have to go to barbers, like, sort that out.
Really?
It pokes out, bruv.
Yeah, myth.
Start coming out like, you know, like Dr. Seuss, bruv. The Weed Whacker is also waterproof and provides proprietary skin-safe technology which helps reduce nicks, knacks and tugs in those delicate nose holes. Just nose holes, no other holes, before you get any ideas, guys. And the ball deodorant and crop reviver. This is what Kevin Samuels was saying to you, man. We actually use this. I use this like maybe once every few days on my balls. Show the man them.
What, you got the ball toner? Mm-hmm. Yeah, that keeps the skin nice, refreshing. Yeah, so at least when the balls are shaved, you don't want your balls to be rough in it when the gal them do what the gal them do. Do you know what I mean? So this is a toner. It helps to revive the skin in the area, yeah?
And you know what Manscaped even did? They even threw in some boxes, bruv.
You get me? I don't know what size they are though, but you know.
Just make sure you got a big piece, bruv.
You know what I mean?
It's going to be sagging.
What size these are? I'm going to try them on though.
Once again, guys, you get 20% plus free shipping, but make sure you put Domino Effect in the discount code. And yeah, hit us on the DMs, tag us. We're going to repost your stuff to our stories. So just tag Domino Effect and we'll be reposting all your stories.
And let us know how, if you do get it, yeah, let us know your experience of it. And
for us, it's been great because I had the 2.0. I actually bought that before we even had this brand deal. So
I was going to say who you bought it from, but there's no point in saying that. That's just trying to plug the next man. But he basically seen it somewhere else and was like, fuck it. I needed something like this, so let me try it out. So even before we got reached out to by Manscaped, he was already using the product. So you already knew what going. Like, I'm completely new to it, and now my balls are fresh, bruv. Beard Gang members, they've been connecting beards since 2019. Yeah? What did I say to Tommy when he first came? If you look at his book, beardless. If you look at him now, sexy. You get me? That's what beards do, you get it? So you want to grow your beard, keep it nice and moist when the gal them come around. Look, Valentine's Day's coming, and the girls love to stroke up a beard. Yeah? Make sure it's the best in Beard Gang members.
Would you say, like, for your formative years, you're pretty much depressed all the time?
Yeah, but many of us are. Like, if you ask my husband now, he said that half Nigerians are depressed. Like, it's what we call functional depressed. Like, it's just, you're not happy inside, but you function.
You still manage to take a lot.
Yeah, and you function really well. So I'm a highly functional person whilst I'm depressed. So let alone when I'm not depressed, my God, the way I function. My mum was probably very depressed. And when I say depressed, I mean the fact that if you think about the circumstances that a lot of us have come from, why would they have been happy? They weren't happy, but what could they do? In Nigeria, for example, if you are clinically depressed, what can that do? You need to buy bread, you need to buy food, you need to work.
They send you to a madhouse and say you're not right.
Is there even a madhouse? You get sent? There is no madhouse. So you don't have the facilities, the resources that we have in this country that they do back home. So when you have that mindset where you go to work irrespective of how you feel, irrespective of if you want a bath, irrespective of that, that's something that you kind of are nurtured in. So irrespective of how I felt, though I felt depressed, though I was self-harming.
Do you think that's negative?
Do I think what's negative?
So that idea that the functional depression, so that in comparison to both how Africans function and if you look at the West, do you think that's negative to be a functional depressed person?
So while I would say that they're both just as bad. They just are. Their effects just come in different ways.
Because one thing I say on that question to Ed is, like, when you look at certain things, the fact that you become aware of it is actually more painful than the thing you're actually undergoing. So, for example, say you're from a household and from domestic violence and you think that's normal, even though the domestic violence has affected you, but sometimes the most painful thing about it is when you go to school and other people are talking about their family dynamic and then you realise how wrong it is. So it's like being under the guise of being fully functional, is it the same sort of damage as actually having the label put upon you? So
to answer both your questions, and I say negative isn't, I would say that they're both damaging. Okay. So it's just that what is measured by society is that your functioning is better, right? Being functioning in society is labelled good. Yeah. But being depressed, whether you're overtly depressed or not, it is not good because you are damaging yourself. You're not thinking at your best capacity. You're not acting in your best capacity. So when you are not aware of something, bearing in mind that when I was younger, I wouldn't be aware of this terminology, especially when you're younger, you're not communicating to your friends. I feel sad. Like, you're all 14 and 13. I don't expect my 13-year-old friend to have understood if I said to her, I'm sad, because everybody was just sad. Everyone was going through things, right? It's not like now in your 20s and your 30s, you think that your friend is able to support you. I didn't have the language. I didn't know, I couldn't tell you at 13 or 14 that I knew that I was internally sad, because it was just a thing. You just it was a normal experience. It's like when, like you said, with domestic violence, it's just normal. Your mum hits your dad hits your mum. That's just what you kind of grow up in. It's only when you get older, you clock, right, that's not the way my parents should be growing up. And hopefully when you get older, you then begin to deal and heal from those aspects.
Yeah, but this is what I'm saying, obviously, I focus on that, and because I use that example. Because let me focus on domestic violence, because it's something I know about. Is almost the realization of how wrong it is can even make you angrier than if you were to live your life thinking,
ignorant is bliss.
Yeah.
There's a level of ignorance that's bliss.
For example, another one is stealthing. Like, I'm sure years ago, women.
What's stealthing? Sorry.
Where people were having sex and then the person removes the condom. I'm sure years ago women had been stealthing, they would have known that it's not wrong, but now it's actually under that grape category. I say grape for YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
They become even more upset and more devastated than they would have been if they didn't know,
Yeah.
Not saying that what's happened is right, both are equally wrong, but it's almost like ignorance is bliss if they didn't know.
Yeah, there's a level of ignorance is bliss, but there will come a point where you are no longer ignorant and you have a responsibility to change something.
Part of the reason why I asked the question is that so I wasn't aware of the term functional depressed, but
high functioning.
High functioning.
There's that high functioning alcoholics.
Yeah. So I was never aware of the term, but now you've kind of put it out there. It makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, a lot of people.
But then, is there any examples of people who aren't? Because I'd assume that that's the majority of the population. So is that a normal human condition to be a highly functioning depressed person, or is there examples of places where people just grow up and they don't experience that?
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's the majority, but it is okay. Like Twitch, right? I'm not saying he is, but that's an example of somebody who people were shocked. Do you know?
But you say it's not. But when you're looking at, say, Maslow's, do you know Maslow's hierarchy of needs? So
the basic needs.
We'll put the little pyramid here now. Ping. But yeah. So when you look at one of them, it's like food and shelter is the bottom one, isn't it? But most people around the world, like 50% under the poverty line, they can't even do that. So would you not say they're so far off being self-actualized at the top, they're still at the bottom of, they can't even get, so would that not be depressed? Would most people not be depressed?
Not necessarily. Not necessarily. They found that the happy people in the world are usually those from the third world country anyways, aren't they?
Because relatively they're poor within themselves.
They're happy.
That's kind of why it's interesting, because they're happy. Even there's a book called Affluenza where he talks about it, and he compares people with Western ideology in comparison to the people in Africa, and obviously, like you said, they are way happier per capita than the people in the West. We're more aware of depression here, whereas in Africa they're way less aware of depression. And again, this high functioning depression, I could say my parents were it, I could say that was me growing up, but we just have to get on and deal with it. Whereas now I think we're plagued by this victim mentality where everything's someone else's fault and no one wants to take individual responsibility for making themselves better. So does giving these things term also give them power to make you weaker internally instead of making you better? It
shouldn't. It should give you the high function, just to make sure, because anyone here that's listening, it isn't a term in a diagnostic manual. So it is just a term to express that there are people that have mental health disorders that is easily masked. So when you find someone like DJ Twitch, who is a life of the party, he's a DJ, he dances, and then 2 days later...
Who's DJ Twitch?
Do you know Ellen DeGeneres' DJ that committed S during Christmas? He was 41 or something like that. Yeah.
Oh,
so the 2 days before that, he put out a TikTok with his wife and he was dancing, and everybody's shocked because he is the life of the party. He's like extroverted person, like, the comedian, what's his name, Robin Williams. So that's the idea that functional depressed person is somebody who has similar symptoms as depression, but it's masked. they are very functioning. They can be the life of the party. They can be happy. They can be smiling. The idea of the terminology really is to say to people that mental illness hasn't got a face. Sometimes you can't sit there and say because somebody's smiling and jumping up and down that they're not going through things, right? But what should happen when you get a label, it should empower you to understand your symptoms and what that means to you and how you can potentially live with it and overcome that. But what it does to some people is, yes, you could say that it makes them, they take it on and they use it as an excuse for not maybe drawing strength and trying to achieve more what they can in life, right? For myself, no, because I've never chosen to get a diagnosis in any of my conditions. It's just something that when you reflect back on your life, and after 8 years of therapy, I'm able to say and see how my life was shaped by my depression, but also how fortified that I was to endure, because I come from a single parent household, brought up in Hackney, Islington. I could have been a statistic like many other young black women, but I wasn't because of other factors that I was able to harness. But alongside of all of the achievements that I've made in my life, depression was just there, and it was just something that was just there below the surface. And now that I've been able to deal with that, I can see how much my mind is more expansive. So even though I was achieving great things, got a first class, got my master's while depressed, how much more now, not being depressed, I'm able to achieve and see the world in a much more better position.
I'll get you.
So I think that makes a lot of sense. But I would also say that part of what makes us human is our ability to deal with adversity. And when we have too much stability, that also creates problems with us.
So you mean if somebody's grown up in a bit of a mushroom, they're kind of protected? And
yeah.
I can give you a perfect example. Me growing up in the rugby environment, so I got put into academies very young. When I was at 19, I got the hard brashment in the face of, you're not good enough. Got dropped I was with a pro team at the time, got dropped. A lot of my friends who say made it, but they didn't quite reach the heights that they were supposed to, but they were pros for years. There's a big spiral within the rugby community, and a lot of it is a very middle-class, affluent sport. Kids just can't deal with it. Like when they, well, not can't say
can't
men.
deal with the failure that they.
I say men like mid to late 20s haven't quite made it to it, and they just come out of depressed. Like but that's because leading up to that point, very stable home, private school educated, went through all the system, achieved everything they had. In terms of, to a certain point, in terms of in rugby.
It was relatively smooth sailing.
Smooth sailing, then got there, bang.
And I think even in the book Affluenza, it makes the point of saying that it compared like people with what they say silver spoons in their mouth, had an easy life for the majority of their life, and they use stockbrokers and lawyers. Quite a high percentage of lawyers and people in stock and in the financial arena end up committing as a result of having so much, losing it all, and not being able to recover from that. Whereas people in Africa, for example, you've never had that much. So even if you go to make it and then lose it all again, you've got that adversity to be able to deal with the problem. So that's why I asked, is it negative? And I like that you twisted it and said it's just not. It's how did you word it?
I said that they're both equally as damaging.
They're equally as damaging, but I kind of see it as a positive in terms of your development as a human being, because your ability to deal with adversity just makes you stronger and well equipped to overcome obstacles in life.
So that's different to when you asked me about high function depression. Okay. So if you're talking about, is it better to go through some level of adversity than not, then yes, I would say adversity is what builds a person, all right? However, we have to also acknowledge that the varying degrees of adversity can also damage a person.
Facts, yes.
Especially when it happens very young.
Yeah.
So, for example, a young girl, young boy getting isn't great. We don't want that to person, right? Yeah. But maybe growing in poverty, that's potentially maybe a good type of adversity to go through. The issue is, as people of colour, we go through adversity just at a societal level, macro level, individual level. Then we have the interpersonal issues that we have, like maybe domestic violence, like ours, like all of these things. That can become a lot for a person to handle. But because we come from a culture that just, we don't talk about our feelings, we just keep on going, we build up a hard shell. And then because for some people, it's to an extreme where they just never feel, they go, then age 30, age 40, they get knocked back. and then they begin to crumble at that age. There's a difference between a crumbling of they've never had anything. I mean the crumbling of they've been, let's say you're pouring, trauma is pouring all of this water. It's going to get a point where the water's going to overflow if it's not empty. The whole point of therapy and the whole point of dealing with your issues is better. The whole point of dealing with your issues is that when you go through something, you pour it out. When you go through something, pour it out. But if it's constantly overflowing, it's going to pour out, right? Now, where you're talking about people that have come from maybe a middle-class background, the socioeconomic situation is different. They haven't gone through a lot of trauma, stable household, mother and father, etc., etc. They haven't got anything. This is very weak because nothing has had to hit them and then build it back up. Two totally different things. Adversity is good. I think it's about how you are supported in that adversity. You can go through a level of trauma, but then if you're having trauma upon trauma, you don't have time to mediate that trauma, grow from that trauma. That's where you see a lot of issues. So if you've got a young person who gets put in foster care, they were neglected by their parent, they were hard by one of the things, they go through foster care. Foster care is not always great for a lot of people when they come out. That's why then you see them, they go into gangs, they go into prisons, they go into mental health hospitals. So I hear that, but research also suggests people that go through a lot of adversity and trauma end up doing the things that we would say are not great in society.
What does the research say comparatively? So if we're looking at the macro level, if you want to compare the West to places like Africa, for example, in terms of S and committing S, because that doesn't happen often or as much in Africa in comparison to Western countries where people live generally more affluent lives. So why is that?
I can't talk about the whole of Africa. What I would say that in lots, like for example, Nigeria, I don't know if they even count it.
Okay.
The reality is that it's difficult to cross-culture studies in situations like that because the country has to identify that person commit S. Right, that makes sense. You've got to say...
But the metrics that is counted aren't the same?
Yeah, aren't the same because are they counting that? It sounds really bad, but we know how it is. You know, when if you get a Niger from Niger, my husband, he would just say, what they say to you is that just don't die. Like in Nigeria, just don't go through certain things because the government ain't going to support you and going to help you. If you die, who cares? Unless you're rich, who cares? The only people are going to care is your family. So if somebody committed S, unless your family, and a lot of families won't acknowledge that, they won't want to put that through, it's not being counted. So to really, you can't compare the stats. Okay. But a lot of people in Nigeria, for example, do commit S. But that's acknowledged or not, it's just like, that person died, or sorry, or that one is sad, or that's it.
No, it's interesting. No, I didn't see it. If you talk to, like when I talk to my mum.
You know why it's fucked, and I shouldn't laugh here. I mean, it's actually fucked. When I went to Niger, I saw a car crash, and this woman was definitely dying with her family, and I was saying to my family members "Rah, she's dying," and they're like, "The ambulance ain't gonna come and the police aren't gonna come. What do you want us to do?" I was thinking, this place is the wild, wild west. They literally just watching her die out. I was just like,
if you can survive living in Nigeria, that's the reason why Nigerians are the most successful black a nation, not only within Africa but outside, because of what they have to experience in that country. After China, and China is actually Nigerians in terms of what the diasporans that do so well outside because of that. It's that kind of thing. If you survive, if you just live and survive to age 80 in Nigeria, that's a blessing.
But the difference in China is they build up their people and they send expats there to build up a nation. There's more money comes into China from abroad than it does made within the country. With Nigeria, it's very...
hustle mentality.
It's the extreme conservatism of, as long as I'm good, I don't care about everyone else. So that's a problem. But bring it on to now. So obviously, because I want to come into the work you're in do now. What was that light bulb for you to be snapped out of the depression, and how did that lead you into what you're doing now?
When in therapy, just having a conversation about it and realizing that, I've been depressed, No, to be fair, I knew that I was depressed before I went therapy, but I think it was, again, the metric that you use to judge yourself in society, I was doing well in. So despite being depressed, I was doing well in. So it was kind of like a situation of, okay, well, I'm depressed and I'm doing well, right? So, but then when I went therapy and then begin to unravel what led to me to be depressed, the thoughts, the neural pathways that I allowed myself. But with depression, a lot of it is the thoughts that you continue to think, the negative thought pattern, and it becomes habitual. And it, to a degree, can become addictive. So you have to break that relationship one has with negative thoughts and really build different neural pathways. So like Eddie said, it takes being responsible and accountable. So for example, I don't know, let's say I did a public speaking gig. Oh, I've got a TEDx speaking gig on the 5th of March, right?
Big up.
Ooh, can I come?
But yeah, tickets are available.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Well, where is it?
Definitely through King's College.
Cool, yeah, we'll come.
Yeah.
Sorry, go on.
So let's say, well, God forbid, but I'll do good. But let's say I don't do good, right? I have to do good. But let's say I don't do good, right? That, if I continue, if I allowed myself to go into my patterns of neural pathways, that can send me into a spiral of depression. I'm terrible, I'm rubbish, because I've defined myself by that very thing. But if I see it as part of a learning experience, right, and just say, well, it is what it is, didn't do well, next time I'll do better, right? But that takes a lot of energy and a lot of time and a lot of going back and forth with a mirror. I say a mirror, therapist is a mirror, but I get that not everybody would do therapy, it might be coaching. Some people might want to do a personal development thing. You have to have a mirror that allows you to constantly go back and forth with that person or that thing, that entity, to enable you to see beyond yourself. Because with depression, it's very much insular. With a lot of mental health issues, anxiety is very insular. It's about you. Anxiety is about you in the future. You're worried about the future. You're worried about something that's not happening right now. With depression, it's like, oh my God, I'm terrible. I'm rubbish. Everybody hates me. I'm never going to make anything of my life. Nobody's going to care if I go. It's all it's all me. So a mirror helps you expand your mindset that yes, you are in this world, but there's 7 other billion people in this world as well. And also, what are you aiming for? What is your purpose? So obviously my faith helped, because it's about having something bigger than myself to aspire to and to believe why I'm here. Because if I'm just here as an insignificant person to have 8 years of my life and just live here, then yeah, I can understand why I'm depressed. But if I feel like I'm here for a reason to leave an imprint and leave an impact, then that gives me something to wake up in the morning.
Well, that's how slave masters got their cattle through slavery. That's why, was it Charles Murray? I can't remember. He says religion is like a mutiny of the masses, an opiate of the masses, sorry. It makes you numb to the pain you're going through. That's why I can't remember, it's in the colonial Bible. One of the quotes is like, God gives his toughest battles to his strongest warriors. And that's what they used to beat into the slaves. Like, you're actually here for a purpose. Because obviously if you're just here and life's just shit.
Yeah, and if you think your purpose, like you said, your purpose is to be working in cotton fields and it's used in that way, then yeah, I can get how that idea, and we know how that idea, that the power and the slavery and all of that, the control, was used to numb and keep us in that position.
See, but I think that's also a testament to the level of consciousness that we operate with today. So that idea that you need to have a mirror and see beyond yourself, for me, is a testament to people's lack of cognizance. Because what I'd call that is like having a level of self-awareness.
And most people don't have self-awareness.
And most people don't have self-awareness. Because for me, what made me quite fortunate growing up is that I was able to develop this self-awareness quite early on. So I was about 16, 17 when I was watching all these different things. And it's like I was able to develop a level of self-awareness that always made me evaluate myself. And because I was always able to do that, depression was something that... Because I'd experienced moments of depression. But because of that level of self-awareness, I was able to take myself out of that frame of thinking because it was always something bigger. There's always something bigger to achieve. But part of the problem is, why is it that people, because I try to have this discussion with a lot of people and trying to have people have that epiphany moment where they realize that things are bigger than them is very difficult to do. So what is it? Is therapy the main key for giving people more self-awareness? Or
I say mirror. I think God is a mirror. Therapy is a mirror. But I think the issue is many people are not willing to learn. The issue about therapy, and let me just use that as a mirror, is you have to confront yourself. You have to confront your worst fears. But people are afraid to confront their worst fears, so they rather live in a state of numbness. They rather live in a state. That's why, this is a funny example, but in the black community right now, a lot of girls or people don't like a lot of black male podcasters because of what's going on, right? But just black podcasters in general, it's getting a bad name because it's just chatting about the same body count, the same thing. But that's a cycle of numbness. In the black community, we've got a cycle of repetitive talking points that doesn't make us think higher, it doesn't expand our mind, but it keeps us in space of numbness. And anyone that diffracts from that gets insulted. You speaking to Tommy Robinson is like, oh my God, how dare you speak to us? Like, why? He's another human being. He has a different thought, opinion. We want to have conversations. Isn't it better to hear him out and then create arguments against him rather than making assumptions based on the little clips that you see on ITV, right?
That's accountability.
Yeah, but that's critical thinking. And what society does, it dumbs us down, doesn't want us to critically think. Because to me, it doesn't make sense why we wouldn't allow somebody who we don't agree on a podcast just because we don't agree on. It just doesn't make sense. We're just as bad as Hitler then, because Hitler had the same thought. You're black, you're not an Aryan race, bun you then. That's the same thing we're doing to another person who has a different opinion.
It's tyranny on the other side.
Yeah.
So the fear, I don't know, it's funny, it's like deja vu. What you just said is what I said to someone in one of the comments. I don't usually respond to stupid comments, but if you're on stupidity, sometimes I respond to stupidity. So I just said, basically, the thing you hate is how you see the right wing as fascist and tyrannical. By you cancelling that person and saying that they're not even entitled to have an opinion and freedom of speech is a human right, you're now becoming the thing that you hate to most, which is tyrannical. So it's a cognitive dissonance.
Yeah, and I think we have to understand as a people where power is, right? Having Tommy Robinson on your platform is not stopping you from getting your job tomorrow. So why are you screaming and shouting? It's not going to stop you from getting a job. Where I would get now, if your manager is using discriminatory practices and stopping you from getting a promotion, that's where you should scream and shout. So what I'm saying is that is that there's something within, I'm only talking about the black community because I'm black, so this happens in all communities. There's something within the black community that, like you said, we denigrate what's good and we prop up what's bad. Why do we put, and no disrespect me, I love my grime, I love it, but why do we put our grime heads, our drill, as the people that should talk for us? Why should we be screaming for them to talk on topics that they themselves don't understand?
Talking about it, I think, I've seen, I'm not going to name some people, but I've seen certain people on reputable stations like Channel 4 say some mad shit. I said, no, this can't be the spokesman for the mandem. But I remember the pin drop moment for me is badness was celebrated in my school. When I went to a mixed school, it was about...
What's badness, sorry?
Like, just being...
Oh, badness. I thought you said bagness. I was like,
no. So probably so it was mixed, so it was probably like 60% white, 20% Asian, 20% black. So black enough, but not like super black. But it was always the black kids always had the worst rep. And it was celebrated to always do bad stuff. But I remember when I went to my second school, when we moved out the area, I went to pick up a chair for a teacher, normal behaviour, and kids were going to me what are you doing? We're trying to learn. And that was a weird experience for me, because in my other school they would have celebrated it. They would have been like, yeah, what you did, you went in. But these lot couldn't understand it, and I got isolated in my second day because some guy threw food at me because he thought it was funny because I was a new kid. So I ran across the lunch hall, fly kicked him, finished him, and then
you must have thought you were Goku from Dragon Ball Z.
I was black tagging taekwondo, so I was just using it in school. I was moving nuts. But obviously fly kicked him, and then for the first, these girls are like, why would you do that? I was thinking, what do you mean why would I do that? He violated me, so I kicked him. What kind of rubbish is that? So when I look, I'm just but I remember when I was at that award ceremony in year 7, all the older guys you're actually a boffin, you know.
That was the one we used to say boffin, isn't it? I haven't heard that word in ages.
Boffin.
I used to rattle me, and I'm thinking, no, I'm still on it, but you got the most awards. You're actually a boffin. Because the way they used to do assembly, they used to do the awards in front of the whole year. And then they would do a big one in front of everyone else. So when I'm getting called up award after award, all the older years are looking at me. They're like, I thought he was on it, but he's just...
But ain't that sad, though? Ain't that sad?
Yeah, it is.
That the fact that being smart, being intelligent, knowing that you potentially could be going somewhere is seen as something that is not good, but being a bad man, doing all of them things there is what's celebrated. And we wonder what's wrong with our community as well. So yes, I think it's about... the reality is our parents need to take responsibility, but they're not. So we now got to take responsibility of what happened in the generation that they came, and then we were born.
Are you first generation?
Technically.
So
second, I think we're called second generation, aren't we?
Second, I think we're first.
No, first is if you're the first ones to be born here is first.
Born here,
Yeah, you're first.
Your mum wasn't born here. Your mum migrated over here, right?
Yeah, I technically was born in Nigeria, but I came in when I was 6 months. So.
Oh, right. So
I get it.
so you're even an immigrant.
I got my British citizen in 2002. Thank you.
No, technically you are. So the reason I asked that question is that because I've had these debates, and it often stems back to me saying this is like, I can't expect my parents to have a full understanding of the dynamics of the UK. So I don't put that responsibility on them to make that change. It's on me, who now understands the dynamic of both what things are like in Africa and what's like in the UK. My mum would always say that in this house is Nigeria. Once you leave this house, that's when you're in the UK.
You're correct definitely from those of us particularly that had that experience, but I'm also talking about the black people that were also there before we came and created a landscape for us to come in. Because the reality is...
Can you put that on this? Because when they were coming up, the landscape for them was fucked.
No, it was. But what I'm trying to say is this, right? In the 80s and 90s, a big influx of Ghanaians and Nigerians came into the UK, right? And the Caribbeans came in the 40s, 50s, 60s, whatever. The point that I'm trying to make is that when you look at research, right, there was a, how can I put it? What I'm trying to say is this. My mum came to this country. Her concern wasn't racism. Her concern was not being immigrated. Yeah. So my priorities were very different to maybe somebody who was second generation born Caribbean. So that you can even see it in conversations when we talk about racism, right? A lot of Nigerians will be like, come on, let's just get on with it, because that's how my mum was. She was like, call me the N-word, I don't care, just don't send me back home. Whereas Caribbean, bruv, that was your concern, right? Whereas Caribbeans have a totally different landscape because they are second or even third generation, right? So when I do say that, I am talking about that wider, because there were some Africans,
110%.
But and there are some Africans that did come in the 60s. Some people came in the 60s as well, so they're second generation. But the majority of us came in the 80s and 90s. So I'm not.
You can't be. I can't think so. Put that on them, man.
No. I'm not putting any responsibility on them in that way, because I think we're talking about two different structural problems right now.
Okay,
right? I'm talking about the breakdown of the black family, right? The breakdown of the black community, right, has to take onus in the black community as well.
Yeah.
Right.
Ultimate accountability.
And there's differences that we can do. The systemic problems that we also develop. The reality is the government don't care and they're not going to take accountability. So how much more we can put on them is just a waste of time.
Do you think that's an African, and I don't want to split this up and be divisive, but most of the people I interact with are like first generation Africans in this country. And like they have this similar mindset to what I'm saying, in the sense that we have to take the responsibility of educating the kids that come after us in how to have that proper family structure. But Jamaicans and Caribbeans were here way before. So
yeah, but they weren't here under the same conditions that we are now. Like, you can't argue on the progression of where we're at now. We're in a space where we can think like that.
What research says, let me tell you what research says, right? They did a research of Caribbeans. So this is what's really interesting. So we know in the UK, Africans do considerably better than Caribbeans, black Caribbeans.
Yeah, academically. This is what I did my dissertation on, so I know all these figures.
But in America, they were comparing Caribbeans to African Americans. Who does better? Caribbeans. So there's something, then this is the thing you're seeing now in Asia, in Asian families, in Southeast Asian families. Their third, fourth generation kids are acting very different to the kids of our age and their parents' age. So there is something about when you immigrate to another country, once you get to the second and third generation, the culture disintegrates and then you become closer to the host culture, and that affects...
Shall I tell you why there's anomalies and that's flawed? Because when you look at... I looked into these figures, so when you look at, even within South Asian, there's variances. So when you look at academically from primary school to secondary school, and these are figures from 2011 because I wrote this dissertation a long time ago, but Bangladeshi and Pakistani kids, they do worse.
But then Indians,
they do worse than the white demographic Africans and Indians. Whereas Indians, out of any demographic in the UK, they perform the best. And Indians came around a similar time, so a lot of them are third and fourth generation. So I get what you're saying, but it doesn't tell the whole story.
It doesn't tell the whole story, but you can't compare India to the Caribbeans as well, because they were colonized. The Caribbeans were like African Americans, where their culture was stripped from them. So that's what I'm saying. There are differences.
Okay, in terms of the culture being stripped, I understand. Yeah,
so that is part of the reason. One of the factors of that's a key difference. So in the Asian population,
but Caribbeans that have gone to America afterwards, they had their culture stripped from them, and they still perform very well. So there's holes all around.
Yes.
There's so many factors.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I meant. There are many factors, but that's the point that I was trying to make. To say I agree with the fact that you can't compare Africans and Caribbeans in the same way. However, there is something to be said that the longer you stay in a country that is not of your origin, right? And we're talking about the West.
The more you become,
Yeah, but becoming like them shouldn't make you bad. That's because shouldn't make it.
But I'm saying Caribbean, but that doesn't stand true for Caribbeans in America though, because Caribbeans in America had their culture stripped away from them, and they've been there for how many generations? They're still doing very well.
Yeah, but I think the difference in the research is that the Caribbeans in America are similar to the Africans in the UK, where they're first generation Haitis, they're first generation Jamaicans. We're not talking about second, third generation Jamaicans. It's not the same. That's what I'm saying. There are Jamaicans that have been in New York, for example, for like 50, 60 years.
Yeah.
But the research that was done were Caribbeans, like Africans, where you come, where your mum just come, your mum still got a Jamaican accent.
So the hunger's still there. But I think there's a part that, and I can't remember where I got it from, so if someone knows, it said it takes around 3 generations to squander generational wealth. So is there something in the time frame that just makes things... The hunger just goes away, so people care less or they try less, because obviously they're 2 different parallels but the same outcome. Okay, so before I answer that question, so this is the reason why I said we put responsibility on our parents. Our parents came to a different country, right? We can't fault them for wanting to make a better life for us, but what they did not do good enough to say, look, we are bicultural. I'm trying to raise you as Nigerian, but I'm not living in Nigeria, and that's where some of the failures came in. They tried to, not all of us, 100%. But for some kids, and you see it now, it was difficult for them because they are eating egusi soup at home, but they're doing whatever they're doing in school. And let's not lie, from age 5, you spend more time with your friends outside in school than you are at home. And most of our parents will come home at 7 o'clock, we'll by ourselves for a couple of hours. The by the time they come, they're tired and we're going to bed. So the time spent trying to understand the culture, I'm not even just about language, just talking about the values, the norms. That's why they'll be like, how dare you say, shut up, mum? What is this? Of course you're going to say, shut up, mum, because you're doing it in school. And that's... Listen,
and they're shocked.
Proper madness, because it's like I tell my mum often, the English you speak is different to the English I speak. So I might say, mum, I can't remember what I say. I used to say to my mum, what do you mean?
Hey,
you're asking me what do I mean?
You're talking back at me.
I'm saying simple. I'm not telling you to shut up or shoot. I'm saying, mum, what do you mean?
This is how you know what do you call it, fresh when I was in school. I said Trafalgar Square. You know Trafalgar Square? Yeah. I remember in year 7 I went Trafalgar Square. No, that's Trafalgar Square. I said, I don't understand. I'm saying Trafalgar Square, yeah? But that's because my mum said Trafalgar Square. And I was like, so you pick up certain things.
Everyone used to say Crips.
Chris.
Yeah. Look, yeah. Chris. No, boy.
Yeah.
Boy, them days. But there is something about that cultural heritage and the value. So it's even, for example, you put things with the right hand, yeah? I didn't get taught that. I learned that I had to do right hand when I did left hand by accident. She went, what?
Yeah.
I said, I never knew that you had to do it with the right hand. It's not actually sat me and said, this is what you do, right hand because left, So this is what I'm talking about, why I can put some blame African parents. When an African mum is shocked while a young boy is coming home at 11 o'clock at night, and you're like, where are you? What is going on? What's happening? A lot of our parents weren't able to take as much of an interest in our education as much as they could have done because, yes, the system, they had to constantly work to pay for things. Yeah. So that's when you see young Africa. Because remember, when I was younger, we're similar age, you're a little bit younger than me. When I was younger, you never saw Oluwa Satin on the news, yeah, when there were stabbings, right? There was a time. It was John Francis. You know, okay, they're Caribbean, right? Then when
there was a transition.
There was a transition that now you're just seeing Chinwe, but you're just thinking, Jesus, what happened? There's something that has happened with the disconnection of you're coming from one culture, coming to the host culture, and not being able to subliminate both of them in a way. And because you get sucked up in a system where you have to constantly work, your kids are hanging out with everybody. You don't have the time. Like in primary school, your mum was probably more invested in who your friends were. Come in secondary school, you're friends with Thierry, you're friends with that person, you're kicking out with that person. Next minute, you're being easily influenced. Your music is also part of that influence. Culture is part of that influence. You want to be cooler. Being studious isn't popular. unless you are buffeted. So when you move to a different area, some of the behaviors that you probably were displaying then were reduced because you realized that amongst the consensus, your behavior is bad. It's not
just
good.
that, but for the first time in my life, I felt so small. Because then when someone actually puts it down, they're just like, we're actually trying to learn, we're actually trying to get to college and you're disrupting everyone. Like,
yeah,
you feel like an idiot.
But that's a general consensus that you realize exactly. Whereas when you were in the other school, the majority of people, right, the majority liked that behavior and thought that was cool. Where the majority of people in your other school did not like that behavior.
No, bring it to now because I'm conscious of time. Tell us about the work that you do now.
Oh, okay, the work that I do now. So the work that I do now, I think I do 2 streams. The work that I do now is I create mental health accessible for inaccessible communities. So people that look like us that normally would not be referred to mental health services in the system or may not even want to go into therapy or psychological therapy because everybody's white and you just think you're not going to be able to relate to the person. So I've created a service that essentially allows people to have a counsellor who looks like them. And then I also do a lot of work with organisations in terms of leadership because the situation that we're currently in, and this is just point blank period, is that we are overrepresented in criminal justice system, in mental health system, in anything that is not great. But we are underrepresented in everything where there's power. We're most likely not to be invested in our business. We're most likely not to be in leadership. We're underrepresented in all of these different things. And this is how it's been for the last 25 years. If you look at the research and you read research in the 1990s, you'd be thinking it's 2023 right now. Nothing really much has changed. Progression has stalled. So there's something that is going on in the buttermilk that we need to really begin to shake up and do something. Or we're going to be in the same position in 25 years on. We're going to be in our 50s and our kids are going to say the exact same thing. Like, that sounds so familiar. And if we want the cycle to change, then we've got to disrupt something. We can't have the same tie-dye excuses. We can't be afraid to have conversation with people that we don't like. We can't be afraid to go to places that we're not meant to be in. We can't continue to champion all our kids just doing the typical black thing, whatever that means. No, you can. If you want to be a musician, nothing wrong with that. But you can, you can actually be an actuary. You can actually be a quantity surveyor. You can actually be an architect. There are other professions other than the typical things that as black people that we are funneled into. Exactly.
Entertainment and sports, isn't it?
Entertainment and sports for girls. Back in the day, like actually in the 90s, I was reading the research that said they'll be like, you can go into hairdressing and you can go into a lot of becoming a receptionist. And it's like, no, I can become a lawyer, I can become a doctor, I can be many different things. So I think we're not a monolith, we're not homogenous. And I think we need to take responsibility. So anyone that is above the age of 21, because if you're 18, I get you're still young, right? But if you're above the age of 21, you got to consider and realize that in 10 to 15 years, you're going to be in your 30s and your 40s, most likely going to have kids. You may already have kids already. You cannot continue the same cycle that our parents did, right? They got their faults, but they did the best that they can. We've got more information, we've got more knowledge, so therefore we have more responsibility to ensure that the next generation, because right now, the Gen Zs, the research that I'm seeing, the outcomes are even worse. So that means...
raised by the internet.
So let me just tell you, you made that conversation, it's up to us, but up to us is also failing the next generation because our age have had kids that are now in secondary school.
Facts.
Right? And people are still japaring. So our age people in Nigeria and Ghana are coming to this country doing the same thing our parents did because their kids are in secondary school doing the same thing. They brought their children from Nigeria thinking it'd be better and are shocked when their child is coming home insulting them. Because things are, the cycle is still repeating itself. That's basically what I'm saying. So we've got to take responsibility, or if we don't want to take responsibility, don't complain.
Facts.
You know what's funny about the whole situation as well is that when my mum, like growing up in Mauritius, she said that her biggest problem was poverty. So she thought, once I get out of poverty, she won't have to deal with any issues. But when she got here, she actually realised that some things she took for granted are happening here. So, for example, one thing my mum always talks about is racial progression. For a lot of people that don't know Mauritian story, and obviously some of my history will be ropey, so Mauritians don't gum me in the comments, but at some point, obviously, colonised island, majority was white-owned, but at some point when they actually got their independence, the wealth was actually reversed. The richest family on the island are white, white French, and they've got old, like family money, but all of the rich list after that are all people of color. So and in terms of racial progression, because it's a melting pot, there's Chinese that have been there for years. There's Indians that have been there for years, Africans that have been there, whites that have been there for years, but religion hasn't stopped them from interbreeding. So you'll go to one household and be like, oh, my mum's a Hindu but my dad's Christian. Go to another, he's Muslim but he's Chinese and he's Buddhist. So she said growing up she celebrated all the festivals, Diwali, Christmas, Eid, everything, all as one. But then when she came here and like she saw the racial division in my school, she was just like, how am I coming to the West, which is supposed to be one of the most civilized places, and you're still dealing with that? And then another thing, she saw like the gang situation, like certain of my friends going away for stupid things. She's like, she was in a third world country. She never saw any of that growing up, really. So she said, like, coming here, like the factors that they focus on are just completely different issues.
Yeah. You made a good point when you talked about that, and I think the reality is that in, like, for example, Nigeria, if their main focus right now is light, electricity, good roads and security, we don't have to think about that. We're here really and truly, but we've got other factors that we've got to contribute, potentially being cancelled, you know, your rights, other rights that are important outside of us. But if your focus is the Maslow's hierarchy, all those other things don't even come to it. But when you have Maslow's hierarchy, when you have essentially your basic needs met, then you become aware of other issues that you now need to fight for. And that is really important for people to become aware. In whatever country, people are trying to leave here to go to Dubai. Yeah, you might be looking and seeing Dubai looking good, but there'll be other factors that you got to now factor in when you're in that country. So the reality is every country has issues that you need to become aware of. And when you're raising kids in this, you have to help them assimilate. If not, everybody will go through some level of identity crisis. It doesn't have to always be racial. It could just be, who am I? You know, that's the reason why a lot of these men podcasts are becoming big, because a lot of men are like, who am I in this world that supposedly women have a say more? They feel that women have a say more than men. And that's why you're seeing all the pushback in the manosphere and stuff like that. The reality is everybody's trying to understand who they are. And if we don't allow for cross conversations like this, you know, you're two men, I'm a woman, Nigerian heritage, but still different experiences. If we don't have this enough, we're going to continually live in silos, live in echo chambers, and we're not going to progress forward to understand how people interact and think and the different regional differences that there are. So, but yeah, I don't know. Do you want to ask me another question, or are we wrapping up?
No, we're wrapping up. Have you got any more questions?
That was
Thinking.
Yeah, that was good. It was good.
It was a good conversation. We could have done it for longer, to be fair.
Mate, yeah, there's lots of things that we could have discussed, but I think what's important for your listeners is just to, don't be afraid to ask questions. And I know that some of these things that we talked about are taboo, and the reality is, if you haven't got friends that you can talk about these things with, you've got to find friends. That's why this podcast is important. But there's Meetup, you know what I mean? Like, you got to find people, because the reality is I'm also aware some of your listeners may not have this. This might be the only outlet to kind of hear other types of thinking. Don't let this be your only outlet. You know, say, okay, how can I meet people like